Okay. So
cool.
So this is what we're talking about. This is from the Old Kingdom. Okay, this is a long, what was like maybe 4,000 years ago or something like that. Really long time ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty accurate representation of like a lot of when you see a lot of Egyptian representations of people, it's often the man will look very brown and red, and then the woman will look very light.
Okay, can I jump in? Let me jump in now.
Of course.
Okay,
go ahead.
Because I think it's important. Let's analyze what we're looking at here. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to correct you on that complexion. That complexion that you see Rahotep, this kind of like orangey brown, that doesn't have representation in ancient Kemet. Ancient Kemet's colors are very, very consistent. It's a strong, deep reddish brown. Yeah. That's the range where the range starts, and it stops at a deep dark black. And you have all of the colors in between. That's what you'll see on ancient. You will not see this orangey.
Mind games, mental manipulation, and deceit. The biggest trick in the afrocentric playbook is convincing you not to believe your eyes. And of course, he's not going to correct anyone spreading Manu Ampimp's lies. Instead, we'll correct theirs. In any case, TKM already admitted they weren't black, and this so-called range to black is purely based on KA statuary, a symbolic representation of the deceased, not their actual complexion. Not only do these rabid afrocentrics lose the visual debate, they equally lose with DNA. It's an attempt to short-circuit the argument to falsely assert that because ancient Egyptians were supposedly black, their art and iconography could only depict black people. Yet their actual skin tones, facial features, and hair textures say otherwise. That's why anyone, even Afrocentrics like Andy, looking at the two individuals on screen can instantly tell which one is Egyptian and which one isn't. Notice the pattern, the struggle, the hurdle jumping, the deception, the deflection, the lies, a rejection of inconvenient evidence. When ideology takes precedence over archaeological evidence, Afrocentrics go great lengths to suppress or dismiss anything that challenges their fraudulent narrative. It's unnecessary to split hairs over Prince Rahotep's skin colour, as there are variations found online, all dependent on camera lens and lighting, and this is true with all pigmented statuary and murals. The point is, he's not black, and that's what shreds Afrocentrism. Further, deep reddish brown is not indicative of black. Ancient Egyptian artisans knew how to represent skin and exactly how to use carbon black pigment, which they reserved specifically for living South Sudanese, never themselves. Let's casually observe an older clip where TKM tells you exactly who ancient Egyptians were and were not.
This is how the Egyptians are depicted there, okay? This is how the...
Would you look at that? He openly concedes Egyptians didn't resemble Sudanese. He flat out admits ancient Egyptians didn't look black. See how easy it was for him without hesitation to pick out the Egyptian from the Sudanese. That's why all his arguments end up looping. He's trapped in his own self, exposing contradictions. By acknowledging ancient Egyptians did not resemble Sudanese, he effectively concedes Egyptians were not black. Who does Prince Rahotep's skin tone closely align with, the Egyptian or the Sudanese? I rest my case. Even Afrocentrics would agree, including TKM, but they insist on this looping charade. By acknowledging ancient Egyptians did not resemble Sudanese, he concedes Afrocentrism is a lie. And it's not just skin colour, but cranial morphology, culture, history, diet, religion, language, and DNA. This gets worse for Afrocentrics. Since he wants to pretend Prince Rahotep doesn't represent authentic ancient Egyptian skin tones, despite his earlier admittance and despite witnessing the comparison for yourselves, let's put his accusation to the test with compare and contrast, not only skin colour but facial morphology. I don't see any blacks and neither does anyone else. Here we are, the Afrocentric coffin slammed shut and nailed forever. Now what? Where are the fabled blacks he fantasizes about? Comparing Prince Rahotep's skin tone to that of a wide range of other dynastic Egyptians from 5th to 20th dynasty reveals clear continuity and consistency. Why don't they resemble black Africans, Andy? Why don't they resemble next-door Sudanese, Andy? Why do you refuse to answer? Rahotep's skin tone is on par with Old Kingdom representation and beyond. Here, the Old Kingdom mastabas of Senebnebeth and Mereruka, There's much, much more.
Professor called Professor Manu Ampim.
Okay.
Rahotep and Nofret are absolutely fakes.
Interesting.
This is absolutely a
All these so-called doctors and professors with their long lists of supposed accomplishments are nothing but fakes, phonies, liars, and pretenders. A little research exposes the truth. Most have no real credentials, much like the self-proclaimed Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, or Diop. These individuals built reputations on false authority and shouldn't be taken seriously. If Afrocentrics insist on claiming Rahotep's and Nofret's complexion are fake, or that the statues themselves are somehow fake, then by that logic, he's accusing every statue and mural showing the same skin tone and phenotype as being fake as well. Where's the evidence for that? Not even so much as a peer review. Nothing. Afrocentrics have an axe to grind with reality. So what you get with TKM, his so-called sources and his band of clapping seals is a study in denial. But because Rahotep and Nofret are painted and have crystal blue eyes, it must be fake, or so they claim. Yet their skin tones, hair, and overall features are entirely consistent with what's seen throughout dynastic Egypt and beyond. See the disconnect?
So first of all, we have the hieroglyphs that are over the shoulder of Rahotep and Nofret. Okay, that's not protocol for ancient Egypt at all. If you're looking at hieroglyphs, they're either going to be down by the feet of the individual or they'll be on the back. Okay, and also you won't have a back plate that goes above the shoulders. You might have one that goes above the neck, but you won't generally have a back plate that goes above the shoulders like that.
A 4th dynasty statue where the back wall sits at and above the shoulders. This is either Meritites I, thought to be a daughter of Sneferu and wife of Khufu, or Meritites II, said to be a daughter of Khufu. You can still make out the faint yellow pigment representing their skin. It goes downhill from here for his baseless argument. Pharaoh Sneferu, the founder of the 4th dynasty. The back wall is much higher than that of Rahotep's and Nofret's. Is the swivel chair fraud going to claim this statue is fake too? 4th dynasty, Menkaure, Hathor, and Bat. Notice placement of the hieroglyph behind them, indicating the 17th nome of Upper Egypt. And 5th dynasty, Sahura. No Afrocentric has ever complained about the high back walls on these. Oh, but you see, it's Rahotep and Nofret who are so realistic, so lifelike, so Caucasian with the blue eyes and pigment. Rahotep and Nofret are fakes, or they're all fakes. You can't have both just because one disgusts you. 19th dynasty Ramses II. Again, we see a back wall positioned higher than the shoulders, complete with hieroglyphs. The 4th dynasty set precedents that appear in various periods throughout Egyptian history. 20th dynasty Ramesesnacht and the Theban Triad. There are plenty more of these statues. All it takes is a little research to see that Andy and his so-called professor are nothing but frauds and liars.
Are very uniform. Sorry.
When was this fake?
Likely by the Germans. Likely by the Germans. So this would have been it would have been late 19th, early 20th century that this was.
Likely Germans. Do you hear this nonsense? He claims to have all the evidence but can't even tell you the culprit, the date, or how it ended up in the tomb or in Egypt or at the museum. No peer review, no documentation, nothing, just vague, bogus assertions and Manu Ampim's lies. Yeah, that's some evidence. The statues of Rahotep and Nofret were actually discovered in 1871 by Auguste Mariette, a Frenchman, not a German. This is basic, and he can't even get that right. You cannot make outrageous claims without backing them up with hard evidence. But then again, that is the only way Afrocentrism survives: lies, false accusations, and deceit. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Where is it? Instead of due diligence research, he swallowed the so-called professor's Afrocentric bullshit, hook, line and sinker, Flinders, Petrie, Medham, London. 1892 already documents the statues in the Cairo Museum by the time of publication. So the claim that Rahotep and Nofret were carved and painted in the 20th century is outright false.
Rahotep's hand is on his lap. okay? It's in a fist. Yeah? If your hand is on your lap and you're not holding anything, your hand will be flat on your lap. That's ancient Egyptian protocol.
What a ridiculous argument. Here we are with multiple statues clearly showing the empty fist in the lap, something he'd know if he actually did any research. So where's his proof that these are fakes? He has none. Khafra 4th dynasty, Nicra 5th dynasty, Demeji and Henetson 5th dynasty, Ramses I 19th dynasty. 2 3rd dynasty statues of Governor Metjen showing both the empty fist on lap and empty fist across the chest. So where exactly is this supposed requirement that a closed fist must be holding something? I'd love to see it. Yet he claims only Rahotep shows this feature, another blatant afrocentric lie built on zero research. Mentuhotep III, both hands in fists across the chest, holding nothing. This is a 5th dynasty statue of the high-ranking official Metjetji, depicted standing upright with both fists closed. Yet swivel chair Andy claimed the colour was fake. If that's the case, he should prove the statue itself is fake, but he won't. The issue isn't really the colour anyway, it's the facial features, which clearly appear Caucasoid. You don't see these features or this skin tone in sub-Saharan populations. Notice how well preserved the paint is on the 5th dynasty statue of Metjetji compared to the 11th dynasty statue of Mentuhotep. So when Andy or any Afrocentric claims that the paint on Rahotep and Nofret shouldn't be that well preserved, it's a lie. The archaeological record proves otherwise.
Have basically not been done to hieroglyphic standard either. Hieroglyphs were always carved in quite heavily. The normal depth would be anything from 2 millimeters to about 2 millimeters to about an inch. That would be the depth of hieroglyphs. On this one, we've literally got a light etching.
Mastaba of Shepseskaf, last pharaoh of Dynasty 4, son of Menkaura, a light etching and paint like that of Rahotep and Nofret. Now what? Hieroglyphs were inscribed on various surfaces, including temple walls, tombs, and papyrus scrolls, using brushes and ink or carved into stone with chisels. These were either raised relief or sunk relief. There is nothing illegitimate about the style in which Rahotep and Nofret's hieroglyphs are depicted. Andy, however, is desperate to concoct all kinds of false theories to stack the deck against these statues, yet the same styles appear consistently throughout Egyptian history. And no, the hieroglyphs carved into stone were never an inch deep. Carvings that deep would risk weakening the stone. The deepest inscriptions rarely exceeded 3/4 of an inch, and most were under 1/4 of an inch.
Another thing, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs were always in color as well. They weren't white and black.
The mastaba of Shepseskaf alone dismisses that lie, and so do the tombs of Tutankhamun and Seti I, where many hieroglyphs are rendered in black. So much for always in colour. Why is it everything that comes out of Andy's mouth turns out to be a lie? How does someone who lies endlessly think they can publish a book that won't collapse the moment it's scrutinised? It's all about money and nothing more.
Husband and wife are always embracing each other. They wouldn't create 2 statues made to be displayed together that weren't showing some kind of an embrace.
Where is the hand behind the back? Where is the embrace?
Nofret's crown is it's an Aegean crown. It's not even a uraeus that is seen in ancient Kemet.
And yet here she is wearing this so-called Aegean crown in ancient Egypt. But where is the evidence that it's an Aegean crown or a crown at all? He failed to discuss which aspect makes this an Aegean crown, and likewise failed to present any evidence of Aegean crowns during the 4th dynasty or any era for that matter. The clown doesn't know the difference between a crown and a headband. A uraeus features a serpent. This is a floral headband featuring rosettes on top of her wig. Let's dismantle his lie and point out clear continuity of the rosette circle motif as seen on Nofret's headband and throughout Egyptian history. Here, a new kingdom gold diadem featuring gazelle heads indicative of Near Eastern influences. Notice a likeness. Uraeus crown of Sit-Hatha 12th dynasty. Notice a likeness? double uraeus crown of Tutankhamun 18th dynasty. Notice a likeness? Rosette headdress, Queen of Thutmose III. Notice a likeness? Rosettes of Seneptisi, Middle Kingdom. Notice a likeness? Rosettes on palace facades. Notice a likeness? Amenhotep III's palace ceiling featuring rosettes 18th dynasty. Notice a likeness? Tutankhamun's chest 18th dynasty. Notice a likeness. The rosette motif appears not only on personal adornment but also in palace architectural decoration. Yet Andy insists this is fake and or Aegean. If it were fake, that would be one thing, but if it actually reflects Aegean influence, then that's something entirely different. In that case, it would represent a legitimate cultural exchange, not forgery or fabrication. As you can see, the rosette motif is found throughout Egypt across millennia. Ancient Mesopotamians had the rosette, where it started. Ancient Minoans had the rosette. Ancient Mycenaeans had the rosette. Ancient Hittites had the rosette. Ancient Assyrians had the rosette. Ancient Etruscans had the rosette. There are literally thousands, perhaps millions, of examples of the rosette motif throughout the archaeological record. It appears across civilizations from Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and Egypt to the Minoans, Mycenaeans, Assyrians, Greeks, Italians, Cypriots, Phoenicians, and even the Scythians. Across Europe and the Near East, and through countless ages, the rosette stands as a shared symbol linking these cultures, one of several enduring motifs that reveal their interconnected artistic traditions. And then there's this, a gold and enamel earring with Hathor alongside the rosette motif, Meroe Nubia 90 BC to 50 AD. And to top it off, Nofret, as represented in her double burial mastaba registry with Rahotep at medium in mastaba 6. Headband features the rosette motif, verifying its authenticity.
Not even a uraeus that is seen in ancient Kemet. And by the way, she shouldn't be wearing a uraeus because she's a princess at this stage. She's not.
What a self-defeating remark. Now he's calling it a uraeus. Truly no words for this level of ignorance, and it's remarkable that anyone attempts to defend it. Yet this is apparently the best Afrocentrism has to offer, and it's pure entertainment. If it was a uraeus crown, the statue would be fake, since she was not a queen. And if she is wearing a so-called Aegean crown, where is Rahotep's Aegean crown? So she's a queen with a crown, but he's a king without a crown. As you can see, his argument is easily dismantled, easily dismissed. In fact, his arguments only further prove the statue's authentic. Rahotep is not depicted wearing a uraeus crown, yet Andy doesn't mention that. So why should Nofret be wearing one? She wasn't a queen, and Rahotep wasn't a pharaoh. She married into the royal family and held the title King's Acquaintance. The simple fact is that the uraeus was the exclusive emblem of pharaonic authority, reserved for reigning kings and later for queens who shared divine or co-regent status. Among Rahotep's titles, he was High Priest of Ra at Heliopolis and the son of the king, begotten of his body. Neither were king or queen, so his entire argument falls flat. During the Old Kingdom, most women, even those of royal rank, did not wear the uraeus crown, as it had not yet become a standard emblem for women. It was only during the New Kingdom, beginning with the early 18th dynasty, that queens began to wear the uraeus crown consistently. Nofret is also depicted wearing a broad collar necklace that complements her elaborate headdress. Interestingly, Andy had absolutely nothing to say about the collar, which is a standard element of adornment throughout dynastic Egypt. If she were supposedly wearing an Aegean crown, then why would she be wearing a distinctly Egyptian broad collar? The inconsistency speaks for itself. This is exactly how illogical Afrocentric ideology is. Her headband is no more of a so-called crown than any of these.
Even her outfit doesn't mean.
He is arguing just to argue, typical Afrocentric tactic. Even when they know they're wrong, they're lying. Several women in ancient Egyptian art are depicted wearing similar attire to Nofret. Tight-fitting sheath dresses were standard for elite women during the Old and Middle Kingdoms. Examples include Hetepheres II, Merisank III, Queen Canute. Notice again, he didn't say anything about Rahotep's shendit, which is traditional throughout Egypt.
Care to really get into it? Because
why is it so well preserved? I mean, that's just the basic argument. Show me another old kingdom. Show me another old kingdom piece that has preserved uniform color like this.
Too incompetent to do the research, he resorts to the typical Afrocentric logic. Because the statue is well preserved, it must be fake. In reality, what he cannot tolerate is that it's Caucasoid, so he seeks to denigrate it by any means possible, of course, without ever openly admitting they're Caucasoid. Why? Because when someone like me comes around to expose outright his ruse, he wouldn't want to be caught acknowledging the truth. From the mastaba of Medjetji, 6th dynasty. He should know preservation comes down to a few key factors: materials, burial context, climate, and craftsmanship. It's entirely possible that the mastaba housing these statues was so well sealed that it experienced minimal humidity, helping them survive in remarkable condition, even more so than some later dynastic art. And they're not the only well-preserved painted statues of the time. We also have well-preserved Old Kingdom tombs. 5th dynasty tomb of Hetpet. 5th dynasty tomb of Kui. 6th dynasty tomb of Tetenebfu, 6th dynasty tomb of Mehu.
And by the way, this
but
is
I'm not
for
here
me,
to argue with you, but I'm not.
No, but I have to make this point. The color of his wife, Nofret, is not. This is a complete and utter break of ancient Egyptian protocol.
At one point, there were no statues, no mastabas, no pyramids, no pharaohs. Now what? She didn't break protocol. She perpetuated it, continuing a tradition that predates Egypt's Neolithic era. Yellow and white for women, reddish for men. That's the standard everyone recognizes. And it's not just about skin tone. Facial morphology and hair texture are equally important. Why don't they resemble Sudanese? Because none of them do, and that fact alone shatters the entire Afrocentric narrative. Why don't we find these Egyptian features anywhere in Sudan or sub-Saharan Africa? If we did, Afrocentrics would still deny them. In the end, they have no answer and never will. If Nofret supposedly broke protocol, then why is it so easy to distinguish Egyptians from Sudanese? As far as most unique and protocol breaking by this clown's same standard, we should then therefore dismiss the Amarna 18th dynasty statues, seeing how they completely break with established artistic conventions. There's nothing remotely similar like the androgynous features before or after Akhenaten's reign, and we all know why. Why isn't he opening his big fat double-standard mouth about that? The Amarna style was short-lived, literally came and went within 15 years, and none of the statuary or murals from that period reflect their actual cranial morphology. But somehow this protocol breaker is championed the most by Afrocentrics, and supposedly meant to prove ancient Egyptians were black. The lies, the deceit, the double standards, absolutely laughable. Afrocentrics like Andy despise the crystal blue-eyed statues of Rahotep and Nofret precisely because they're genuine. Here they are in situ, undeniable, authentic, and perfectly preserved examples of early dynastic artistry. Now what? Within this chamber stood the statues of Rahotep and Nofret, now in the Giza Museum, and the doorway was entirely blocked with masonry cemented into place when Mariette's workmen found it, the chamber being intact. Flinders, Petrie Medium, London, 1892. Now what? The Narmapalitan mace head from 3100 BC both demonstrate the rosette predating Ranifer and Nofret approximately 500 years. Now what?